BookTube. My name is Elizabeth. Welcome back to my channel, Book as in Books. This video is a hot reaction to another video. It's a hot reaction because I've just finished watching like 2 minutes ago the video in which Jolene and Lindy announced the best Canadian books of the 21st century. And it's also hot because it's very humid here. It's been very humid in the past few days, and today the temperature is a bit less warm, but it's still very sticky and muggy. So I'm very hot. So this is a hot reaction in all the meanings of the word. So in case you're new to all of this and you don't know what I'm talking about, here's a bit of context. A few weeks ago, the New York Times published a list of 100 best books of the 21st century according to a bunch of authors that they surveyed. And of course, there was a reaction from the readers, so the New York Times published a list of 100 best books of the 21st century according to the readers. And the reaction in Canada was, well, what about us? Because there's just 5 Canadian books. In both of these lists, I think there are just 5 Canadian books. And there's Jolene from Bookworm Adventure Girl, who had the idea of creating a Canadian list. And she asked for the help of Lindy from Lindy's Magpie Reads, because she reads tons of Canadian books. And together they have asked us, booktubers, watchers of booktube, and people from other places, from Instagram, Bookstagram, Book Talk, and I think Jolene reached out to authors so that they could submit their list too. And basically anyone was invited to present their list of up to 10 books of the 21st century Canadian books that they thought were the best. And I did submit my list, which was a video that I published 2 weeks ago. I'm going to leave a link to it in the description box. And of course, I'm going to leave a link to Jolene and Lindy's channel and to the video where they announce what is the top list. And it's not a top 100 list because it was inconvenient to cut it 100 because a number of books had the same number of votes. So they would have had to select in some sort of way where to cut the number of books, how to include the last few books. So they decided that the list would have a random number of inclusions, but it would have to be minimum 3 votes. So apparently 65 people submitted the list, so potentially 650 books. But we did not submit 650 different titles, we submitted 350 different titles. So it's already quite a lot. And of those 350, there were 67 that were voted for by at least 3 people. So that's the top Canadian books of the 21st century. It's a top 67. So of course, when I watched the video, I had my notebook and my pencil and sorry, too much enthusiasm. And I was writing down how many of these books that I've read. And at first, I already knew that my number would be rather low because, Jolene and Lindy announced that there was 67 books, and they gave some general statistics first. They started by mentioning that 60 of them were fiction and 7 of them were non-fiction. I thought, oops, that's it. Because if I haven't made the count, but of all the books that I've read published in the 21st century by Canadian authors, I think at least half would be non-fiction for me. So if only 7 non-fiction made it on the list, my chances were not really good of me having read many books on the list. And then they said that there was 30 historical fiction, so that's 45% of the list. And I thought, I don't really read Canadian historical fiction. Oh, okay, that's not good. And then they said there was 17 speculative fiction. I thought, oh gosh, I really don't read those, because when I hear that there's some speculative element, I tend to flee the book. I don't like that. So, okay, I thought that's 47 books that there's a pretty good chance that I haven't read. So that leaves a potential of 20 books. And I thought, okay, how many of these books perhaps maybe I could have read? And then both Jolene and Lindy gave their number of how many of the books on the list they had read. And for Jolene, it was already a good number, 40 something, and it was like 2/3 of the list. Oh, good for you, Jolene. And Lindy gave her number, and it was like 63 books. There were 4 books that she hadn't read. And I decided, okay, that's going to be my objective. I want to have read more books from the list than Lindy has not read. So 5. I figured if I've read 5 books from the list, I'm not bad. I'm not a bad Canadian or bad a bad reader of Canadian literature. If I've read 5, I'm going to be happy. And also I thought 5 was a good number because from the list of the New York Times, I had read 5 books. So I figured, okay, if I've read 5 of 67, it's a better number than 5 of 100. So I said, okay, 5. Let's make this the objective. And I listened to the video and I wrote things down, little notes. Oh yeah, I've read that one. I read that one. Oh, I've read that one. And then, no, never read it. Never read that. Huh, never heard of that. Nope. And there was a very long dry spell that, oh, I've read that one. At the end, did I reach my objective? Did I? Yes! I reached the objective. Actually, I doubled my objective. +1. I've read 11 books on the list of 67. And I'm proud. I know it's nothing to Lindy's 63, but it's good for me. It's excellent for me. So I'm just very happy. Little pat on the back. So what else do I have to say? So I've read 11 books on the list. Of those, there are 4 that I had voted for. I made a video about my top 10 books, the 10 books that I submitted for the list. I'm going to leave a link in the description box to that video. And did I mention that I would leave links to Lindy's and Jolene's channels and video? Because of course I'm going to do that. So check the description box, there's stuff in there. So of my list of 10 books, 4 made it on the final 67 list. And I'm quite happy because I knew that some books, I didn't really know how many votes it would take to make it on the list, but I was sure that some of these books, I would be the only one to vote for them. The War That Ended Peace by Margaret Macmillan. Yeah, not really. No one else is going to vote for that. What's the other one? Walking on the Land by Farley Mowat. Now, Farley Mowat, a very important Canadian author, but he's not really an author of the 21st century. He's an author of the 20th century. So if there was a list of best Canadian books from the 20th century, he'd have at least 1 book on the list. I don't know which one it would be, but he'd have 1 book on the list. But for the 21st century, not surprising that he's not there. And then, what else? Oh, For Sure by France Daigle. Yeah, I kind of knew, especially if the list, it's somewhat targeted towards English-speaking Canadians because we are on book 2 in English. So I figured that books originally written in French had perhaps less of a chance. And even in books written in French, like in French Canada, it's not that well known. For Sure, Pour Sûr, it's not particularly well known. So I knew it didn't have a chance. And then The Cello Suites by Eric Siblin. Yeah, it's somewhat niche. It's super interesting. I think it won an award like the Governor General Award for Nonfiction or something like that. But it's still very niche. It's about classical music. So I knew that wouldn't make it. So 4 books, I'm happy. The one that I'm perhaps surprised or a bit sad not to see there is The Best Laid Plans by Terry Fallis, which is extremely funny. And I'm kind of sad that it didn't make the list because it's a bit unfair that good books, in the mind of many people, cannot equate funny books. That a fun book cannot be a quality book. And that is a bit frustrating, really, because The Best Laid Plans is really funny and it's very, very Canadian. It is inherently Canadian. So, yeah. I was really hoping that one would make it. So that one, I'm a bit disappointed. The others, I'm not too surprised. So the 4 books from my list that made it, from my 10 that made it on the 67 list was Still Life by Louise Penny. So that one is a mystery. And then there was And the Birds Rain Down by Jocelyne Saucier, which is one of the only 3 French books that made it on the list. That's the thing, I'm a bit disappointed that there was only 3 French books on the list. But then again, given that most of the voters are English-speaking first, I'm not that surprised. And then there was Seven Fallen Feathers by Tanya Talaga and The Inconvenient Indian by Thomas King. So that one, The Inconvenient Indian, was at number 12 if I remember correctly, on the list. And that is, of the books that I've read, it's the one that ranks the highest on the list, because I have read 0 from the top 10. I wrote down the top 10 and they were all fiction. Quite a few of them historical fiction or speculative fiction, which almost guarantees that I have not read it. If I have read 11 from the list and only 4 came from my top 10, that means that there's another 7 that I had read. And these are Birdie from Tracy Lindbergh. I had actually thought of putting it on my list, on my top 10, but choices had to be made, so I decided not to put it on. There was also Son of a Trickster by Eden Robinson. I've read that one. I've read the entire trilogy. So Son of a Trickster is the first of a trilogy. So that one might be speculative fiction, but then again, the first book is not very speculative. The entire trilogy is very speculative, but the first book is not. And if it had been the entire 3 books, like a single book, a single volume of the 3 books together, the trilogy together, I might have considered it. But just the first book on its own, to me, it was not top 10 material, if I can say that. So I've read that one. It's good, but to me, it's not necessarily my favorite. Then there was Doppelganger by Naomi Klein that I've read just in June or July. It's a good book. It's a very good book, but I think it's benefiting from being very recent. If we actually make the same exercise in 5 years, I'm going to say that the book doesn't make the list. I don't know. It could be just me, but I think it's benefiting from being very recent. Another one that I've read, Monkey Beach by Eden Robinson. So the same author as Son of a Trickster. That's something that I noticed, that several authors had several books on the list. And that's another factor why there's so few that I've read. Because like many people, I suppose, I tend to read, if I find an author that I like, I'm going to read many books by that author. So if I haven't discovered that author and that author has like 5 books on the list, well, that's 0 and 5 for me. So that's, I think of Michael Crummy, who had 4 books consecutively. And there was Margaret Atwood, who also had 3 or 4 books. And Emily St. John Mandel, who also had 2 or 3 books. I haven't read these authors. I've read Margaret Atwood, The Handmaid's Tale. I read that one. But the others, haven't read them. So that kind of contributes to me not being surprised that I've read so few and being very happy that I've read 11. So let's continue with the books that I have read. So Monkey Beach by Eden Robinson. And I was wondering, Lindy said that she had read the book 3 times. And now I'm asking you, Lindy, could you please explain me the ending of Monkey Beach? I don't understand it. What happens at the end? I don't understand. Maybe I should reread it. And then there was Rue by Kim Thuy. So that's one of the 3 French-Canadian books. So far I've read two out of 3. The other one, the other French-Canadian book was early on the list. It was Suzanne by Anaïs Barbeau-Lavalette. And I'm trying to think, I should have checked before filming this, because I think the title changed a lot between English and French when it was translated from French to English. Because according to Jolene and Lindy, this is the story of the author's grandmother, or somewhat based on the author's grandmother. And I remember that the author had a very, very successful book, but the title was not Suzanne, and that was on that topic. And it was La femme qui fuit, so the woman who flees. So I think it's the same book. I should have checked, but I think it's the same book. And I haven't read it, but I want to read it. So anyway, so of the 3 French-Canadian books, I've read 2. Not bad, 2/3, 66%, yay! And then there was And the Bird Rained Down, which I read, which I voted for, I should say. Life of Pi by Yann Martel. That book made the 100 list, the list of 100 best books of the New York Times, so I'm not surprised that it's also on the Canadian list. And then there was From the Ashes by Jessie Thistle, which is a nonfiction. It's a memoir of recovery from addiction. And that completes the list of books that I have read. So that's not a lot. That's 11. So I noticed that a lot of the books had stickers on the cover that Jolene showed, many of them had stickers from Canada Reads. And I was wondering how many, when we submitted our votes, we didn't have to put any justification or explanation about that. But I was wondering how many of these books were discovered by the people who voted for them through Canada Reads. In case you don't know what Canada Reads is, it is a sort of book competition organized by the CBC. So there are 5 celebrities, though several of them tend to be unknown until they make the panel, who each defend one book. So during a full week, they debate the book, the 5 books, for about an hour, or is it 30 minutes that they have? I don't remember the exact time that they have. So they defend a book, and at every round they eliminate one until they choose the book, so over 4 days, until they choose the book that Canada should read, that all of Canada should read. And yeah, so a lot of the books on the list, and most of the books that I have not read but that I have heard of, I've heard of them through Canada Reads. And I was wondering, yeah, how many of these books were read because of Canada Reads. There were also several books that had a sort of sticker from either the Giller Prize, so a Giller Prize finalist, or a Governor General Award winner or finalist. And again, I was wondering how many books were discovered through these prizes. So I suppose it would be a question for the people who submitted a ballot. Did you know of these books before they won or were nominated for these awards or competition? Or did you discover them through these awards or competition? Because, yeah, book prizes are powerful tools to make some book knowns. So, yeah, so that's the thing that I noticed. Yeah, as I said, there's only 3 French-Canadian books. I'm a bit disappointed by that, but not exactly surprised. So the province of Quebec is really underrepresented in that book, in that list of 67 books. However, Newfoundland appears to be overrepresented. It had at least 5 books, but I think more than that. Yeah, something literary is happening in Newfoundland. I probably should try to read more books about Newfoundland. And oh yeah, and the only thing that I wanted to say now, I took notes of some books that I have not read but would like to read. So there were 4 books that were on the list that I haven't read yet and would like to read. So the first one is the 3rd French-Canadian book that I haven't read, which is Suzanne, but I don't think the title is Suzanne. In French, I think the title is something else. So that book I want to read. Also, Indian Horse by Richard Wagamese. I haven't read it yet, and I should. I should, not for some moral obligation, but because I'm pretty sure that I'm going to like it. So that's the reason why I'm saying I should read this, because I should read this, I'm going to like it. Then there's Do Not Say We Have Nothing by Madeleine Thien. I actually have a copy of the book somewhere, and I just haven't read it yet. So I bought the book when I saw it on sale, like in the bargain section at Chapters. And it was not long after I had heard Shawn from, he changed the name of his channel, Shawn Breeds Books, that's the new name of his channel, formerly known as Shawn the Book Maniac. And he said that this book was his favorite book. At the time, he said it was his favorite book. So I was thinking, okay, if Shawn likes it, I'm going to like it too. So yeah, so that's the reason I bought the book. I still haven't read it. And the only book from the top 10 that really interests me is All My Puny Sorrows by Miriam Taze. I've passed in front of the book several times, and there are music notes on the cover of the book, and I love any book that relates to music. I really like that, and for some reason I never picked it up, but I really want to read it. And the way Lindy talked about it, it sounds really up my alley, like humor within a dark topic. I like that, so I want to read that. So that's the 4 books from the 67 that I would like to read. And if I read these 4 books, that would mean I will have read 15 books from the 67, and that would be really good. So that's it. That's my reaction to the 67 best Canadian books from the 21st century. And let me know in the comments what you think of that list, if you've watched it, if you've seen it, if you voted for it, and how many have you read? I'm curious. I'm sure you already have written it down in the comments under either Jolene's or Lindy's video. And of course, I'm going to look for that. But if you want to repeat it here, please feel free to do so. And thank you everyone for watching, and I will see you in the next video. À la prochaine!